All right, gang, welcome to the Car Bar. Again, where we cut through the hype of the industry. We cut through the fluff of the automotive, I'm going to say. I'm not going to say the car business. I'm going to say the automotive industry. And we get to the real talk with real car guys and gals. And we have an honest conversation about the state of the union. Making his first episode appearance, David Schaefer with Conley Insurance Group. David, I'm going to ask you to go and introduce our guest for today, if you'd be so kind.
All right. Well, today we're excited to have John Konersmann, our first Powersports dealer, on the episode.
Awesome.
He's an entrepreneur of 3 rooftops across Metro St. Louis, a multi-line brand at every store. And he's going to tell us his story, where the powersports industry is lying today, and also the president of the Missouri Powersports Dealer Association.
Holy shit, John. That's a hell of an introduction.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on.
Your
Happy
new
to be
publicist. Your new publicist,
Yeah.
David Schaefer.
My hype crew.
A hype crew.
Do what I can.
That's awesome. John, you've spent 30 years inside the same building, and it's not necessarily how most people would do it in automotive. You walked in at 17 years old as an entry-level personal watercraft technician. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. When the shop was called West County Powersports, you worked your way all the way up and climbed that ladder to general manager.
It was called something else.
What was it called?
Joel Bianco Plus.
Joe Bianco Plus. How long was that brand? And
So that dealership opened in 93. I came on in 96.
awesome.
And that's from the Bianco Automotive family.
I was going to say, we're going to get into all of this. There are so many, and I want our viewers to kind of know this too. And hopefully I'm not, by suggesting there's a crossover between automotive and power sports, there is direct relational operations, the whole 9 yards.
There's a lot of similarities.
A lot of similarities there. You worked your way all the way up to general manager. And then in 2004, at a ripe young age of 26 years old, with the previous owner's health turning, you were offered and negotiated the purchase of the store.
Mm-hmm.
Kawasaki, Suzuki, Polaris, Sea-Doo, Can-Am, every one of your franchise partners endorsed that purchase, and you bought it.
Mm-hmm.
We are many years, many moons past being the age of 26. I'm kidding. You should reject that altogether.
20 years or so.
20 years since. So before we dive into the operational, before we dive into the business side of things, I've got some icebreakers that I want to open up with, if you'd be so kind.
All right, hit it.
We are recording a week past July 4th, which technically is basically Christmas in your industry, correct?
Christmas is usually a little bit before now. You
Yeah.
know, springtime is when things kick off for us.
Gotcha. Personal watercraft, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, the weekend where that calendar probably gets pretty mad prior to the holiday, I'm sure. Give me the temperature of the last 10 years of these 3 stores. It's 2026 stronger, weaker than even 2025 was to you.
Yeah, you know, we're growing every year. We've gotten bigger and bigger every year for us. You know, we've had a lot of success with some of our lines more than others, and some are growing at a really rapid pace. Some of the brands are stagnant. But really, for the last 10 years, side-by-sides have been huge. And any powersport dealer you talk to is going to tell you the same thing. The side-by-sides have really been the driving force for our whole industry. If we go way back in the 90s, watercraft were huge, and that's what I was into. That's what I got into this business.
Right.
It was watercraft, and we were doing hundreds of watercraft every year, and side-by-sides weren't even a thing in the 90s. There was a couple. Kawasaki made a mule, John Deere had a Gator, but that was it in the 90s, and they weren't selling. People didn't buy many of them. We did a few ATVs, but watercraft were huge in the 90s. And then they kind of started to get bigger and more expensive and kind of less popular. ATVs started getting big. They went through a little bit of a growth period. Sport bikes did too, and then side-by-sides started getting more and more popular. Probably around 2008 or so, 2006, they started getting more and more. And now, gosh, it's at least 75% of what we do is side-by-sides.
75%?
In parts, service, sales.
All profit centers, 75% of your total revenue can be attributed to UTVs.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. I did not know that. CF Moto just launched the turbocharged Z10 Sport UTV. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I want to make sure my research was accurate. Powersports Business flew to Nevada to test it. You've had CF Moto in your lineup for a while. From your point of view as a dealer principal chair, or in the dealer principal chair, is CF Moto still a value story, or is it becoming a genuine threat to Polaris and Can-Am?
They are a threat to Polaris and Can-Am.
Not
and
becoming.
Yamaha. They're there. What's funny about CF Moto, they're the one brand that doesn't report their sales figures.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
They just don't. They never have. They choose not to, and they don't. But Polaris, Can-Am, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, they report their sales figures, and there's a lot of data that goes into it, and you can see what models are selling good in what segment of the United States for what PMA for what dealership. And all the brands can compare, like, well, what's working for each other, what's selling great, what's not, and they can adjust their pricing and rebates and incentives and stuff based on what is popular and what's working, what's not. And their manufacturing as well. You know, if certain models are tanking, then they're not going to build as many. None of them know what CF Moto is doing. The only reference they have is talking to CF Moto dealers. Like Polaris, for example, I've got Polaris at all three of my stores, plus CF Moto at all three of my stores. Polaris can ask me what's going on, but another Polaris dealer down the road that doesn't have CF Moto, they don't know. They don't know what they're losing. But CF Moto is our number one, far and away.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, number one, it's a value proposition.
Yeah.
Business model with them. It's priced a lot more cost effective than a Polaris or a Can-Am or a Honda, but the vehicle's loaded with features, and we've seen that from Chinese manufacturers before. You know, for years we've had like Chinese youth bikes and go-karts and ATVs, sure. But they've also kind of, with that goes pretty poor quality, and part availability is a thing. Like, and we wouldn't touch Chinese vehicles for a very, very long time. Like, nope, keep those away. We're not going to service them. We can't get parts for them. We're not going to touch them. But CF Moto came to town probably 14 years ago or so. My rep, who's still my rep now, he was my Sea-Doo rep for a long time. Good dude. Loved him. He ended up leaving BRP, Sea-Doo, and he ended up bouncing around, did a couple things, and he called me a couple years later. Hey, I got a vehicle I want you to check out. Okay, what is it? It says CF Moto. I've never heard of that. What is it? Well, it's a Chinese ATV manufacturer. They're huge in the rest of the world. They're not in the United States yet. No, I don't want that.
Yeah, you turned it off right away.
Yeah, we don't want Chinese stuff.
Yeah.
We don't mess with those. He goes, well, the president of CF Moto wants to come in and talk to some U.S. dealers. Will you at least talk to him and look at our stuff? And
oh, wow.
Well, okay, sure, but I still don't want him. So President of CF Moto flies to St. Louis in July with 4 of his people, and none of them speak English. And they brought out my rep drove out a box trailer with an ATV and a side-by-side in it, and me and the 5 CF Moto guys and the rep were standing in this box trailer in 120-degree July looking at these vehicles that I've never seen before and nobody's seen because they're not in America. I looked at them, and yeah, okay, they look like a lot of the other Chinese vehicles, but I talked to them for an hour and a half. I don't know if they understood anything I said or not, but told them anyway. And I ended up taking a couple of them just as a favor to him. I took like 4. All right, we'll try them. We'll see what happens. We did a couple, then I ordered a couple more, and and they did okay. They didn't do great. They started getting better and better and bigger and bigger, and we do a couple more here, a couple more there. And then during the pandemic was when really things started to take off for that brand. Yeah, they were the one brand that really kept our showroom full. Couldn't get vehicles from any manufacturer.
Absolutely not.
I've got all of them now. Like Polaris, Can-Am, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, we've got all of those. Couldn't get product from them. But CF Moto was decent. We were able to get a decent amount of product from them. And right at that time, right before the pandemic started, they released their new utility side-by-side, which was very similar to a Polaris Ranger and how it's designed and how it's laid out and feature benefit-wise. Very similar, but it cost less. And then, then all of a sudden that's the only thing we have, and it's starting to get some action. All right, cool. And then the ATVs kind of went through a little bit of a redesign every couple of years, and they're getting better and better too, and they're pretty sharp now, and they've evolved the line. And then they made a multi-passenger side-by-side that competes with like the Polaris Ranger and the Crew and the Can-Am Defender Max, but it's thousands of dollars less. And then things really started taking off for it. Like, wow, these things are great. Margins are huge. There's not a lot of dealers around. We're able to hold our profit margins on them. This is working out awesome. And then they announced at the dealer meeting 2 years ago, there are a couple of new models. The new U10 platform, which is a even nicer side-by-side. Comes with a audio system, a touchscreen with GPS, LED lights, a whole new motor, hydraulic bed lift. Thing is loaded, and it's priced thousands of dollars less than a Polaris. But this whole time, the quality's been great.
Yeah.
Even from the start, we never really saw a lot of problems with them like, typically we would see with the Chinese stuff. Parts availability's been great.
That's what I was going to ask.
It's all come from the United States. Some parts go on back order like they do with every brand, but the quality has been exceptional with CF Moto.
But now, after the pandemic, you said the other brands couldn't bring in the inventory. CF did. Where are we today?
Well, it's different.
Is it
now.
kind of flip-flopped because of the actual...
Yeah, we can get enough of any vehicle that we wanted now. Like, we can have 50 of anything tomorrow, probably, if we wanted it, except for some of the CF Motos. Their new cab model that came out about a year ago. It's been the hottest thing I've ever seen in my life. I've been in this industry 30 years now. I have never seen a vehicle get so much attention over that thing. We've had people calling from all over the United States looking for CF Moto Highlands. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's their new cab model, which is really the hot thing in the industry now.
Right.
Side-by-sides are a big thing, but everybody's wanting something with a cab with heat and air conditioning. And in our area, that makes a ton of sense, with having climate control, because in Missouri, it can go from 120 degrees in July to a couple months later, it's negative 20.
Right.
So if you don't have climate control, your window of riding is, 8 months, 6 months, and it depends on the day, Nobody wants to go out when it's 120 degrees out. Nobody wants to go out when it's freezing cold either. But you got a cab with heat and air conditioning, you can ride year round.
I mean, it's the one benefit that Bobcat had. Being from North Dakota, we have a very small window.
Yeah.
If people are not familiar, our summer months are 3 months. So, and we do get some hot temperatures. People think we're negative 20 year round. We're not. We're not Southern Canada. So, but I think was a buying advantage for Bobcat for a lot of years to have that enclosed. But now I see manufacturers are coming out with those enclosed cabs, which I think is awesome. Yeah,
Polaris was the first one to really come out with a cab vehicle. I think 2019 or so was the first year, 2020, something like that. And it was a $25,000 vehicle, and I scoffed at it. I thought, there's no way that people are going to spend $25,000 on a side-by-side. They're going to go drive in the woods and bounce off of trees and rocks. That's silly. Boy, was I wrong.
Boy, were you wrong.
And, that first year, they weren't super popular.
Sure.
We sold a couple, not a lot, but then people started asking for them. We started stocking a couple more the next year, and okay, we're selling a few more, and more coming in. All right, cool. Then Can-Am came out with one. All right, cool. And this is more and more. People are wanting these cabs. And then a couple years later, Kawasaki came out with one. And then CF Moto jumped in the mix now, and everybody wants the CF Moto. That's huge.
And we're touching, 55,000 on some of these
price,
cabs?
yeah. The most expensive one's a Polaris 1500 North Star Ultimate Crew. They're about a little over 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're nice. It's like driving a new truck. The fit and finish is sharp.
What equipment can you get on a vehicle that you can't get on a side-by-side now?
There's probably more you can get on a side-by-side. There's snow plows are a quick and easy attachment. They just clip right on the front. We do a lot of snow plows. Some of them come with hydraulic bed lifts now. You can add those. There's all kinds of bed attachments and enclosures. You can get like enclosures for dogs, or you can get headache racks that winch game up into the bed so you don't have to lift it. Roof racks, lift kits, lights, audio, all kinds of stuff. The possibilities are endless with these things.
That's fabulous.
Which is great for the dealership too. The side-by-sides have created a great platform for us for parts, accessories, and service on top of the sale, because people that buy side-by-sides typically don't just leave them stock.
Right.
Some of these cab models, because they already come with a full enclosure and they're pretty loaded to start with. But the ones that aren't, everybody's adding a roof. Most people are getting windshields. They'll add snow plows. They'll add lights. They'll add radios. All kinds of other attachments to fit their particular purpose for what they're getting the vehicle for. So that allows the dealership to be able to, have some extra income on the accessory side of thing, and then service as well for installing these accessories and coming back, getting more stuff put on them. So
that's amazing. Yeah.
And we don't really have that with the watercraft and the motorcycles. Like, watercraft people don't add accessories.
Right.
There's really nothing to add to them. Dirt bikes and street bikes, not really a whole lot. ATVs, we get some. Some guys will do some snow plows and bumpers and that kind of stuff. Nothing like a side-by-side. We kind of start with a basic package, and we can outfit it with whatever accessories the customer's going to want based on their needs and their use.
I'm not going to ask you what you have on your property, but my question is, would you own a CF Moto?
100%.
That's brilliant. Polaris just posted Q1 2026. Sales are up 8%. ORV's up 3%. And they finally closed the book on Indian Motorcycles with a $31.6 million divestiture. As one of their dealers, how does the pure Powersports Polaris feel different to work with than the Polaris that was still holding Indian?
It's still pretty new. Like, we haven't seen anything change, really.
Right.
And I don't see Polaris changing a whole lot. Polaris is the number one brand of Powersports. They have been for a long time. And they're a powerhouse. They're big. They sell tons of vehicles. There's lots of dealers. And they've got a lot of things that they do well. There's other things that from the dealer side that they don't.
Sure.
And we could go on all day about some of that. But, you know, there's a lot of frustrated Polaris dealers. We're not seeing the same kind of profit potential that we are with Polaris as we are with some of the other brands. There's a lot of dealers out there, a lot of dealers fighting over each other. We're choking on inventory, and I'm sure Automotive sees a lot of the same things too.
Very similar.
But
that sounds like a similar story. Yeah.
And it's more Polaris is about moving units, and as soon as you sell one, there's another one on the truck on the way there to fill up your lot again. And the vehicles have gotten bigger, they've gotten more expensive, they cost more to floor plan, they cost more to store. You know, we got to have bigger dealerships, we got to have bigger warehouses, we got to have more accessories and bigger accessories. We have warehouses and racks full of roofs and windshields and bumpers and all that stuff to accommodate these vehicles. So, you know, for most dealers, we're all in the side-by-sides now, and we've had to expand our facilities to accommodate these bigger vehicles. But, you know, Polaris is a big part of it. They're the number one. But 2 years ago, bounce around, but 2 years ago at the CF Moto meeting, they claimed they were number 3 behind Polaris, Can-Am, CF Moto.
Because they can see the numbers.
They can.
They don't publish the numbers, obviously.
Nobody else sees it.
Hence the Chinese relationship, I can assume, is part and parcel to why they don't disclose and why they don't have to.
I assume so. The rest of the manufacturers are all Japanese or U.S. based or Canadian, Can-Am. But CF Moto's kind of a dark horse. Nobody really knows much about the company, and I know a little bit, but I mean, I don't know the whole corporate structure and how they're set up. But
as it relates to your customer, I mean, the number one thing is reliability. You know, service after the sale, to be able to provide them the parts and the service afterwards. All those things that were limiting Chinese brands prior, sounds like CF Moto has that solved.
They've got to figure it out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You walked into this building as a personal watercraft tech. 29 years later, you own the place. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird is it, even now, to pull into the parking lot in the morning as the boss?
It is weird. You know, I started as a kid in this industry.
Right.
And to rewind all the way. So my parents got a house at Lake of the Ozarks when I was 8. And a couple of years later, I got into riding watercraft. Cool. And loved it. That was my thing. I loved watercraft. And I got a job at the lake working at a little shop between my junior and senior year of high school. I went down there for the summer, worked at a shop, loved it. Living at the lake, messing around with wave runners and Sea-Doos all day. It was great. So then when I graduated high school, I went to tech school in Florida for watercraft and came back and started working for Bianco Plus in Valley Park. And I was there assembling vehicles. You know, that's kind of where you start most of the entry-level kids out of school. You got to have them putting together the new vehicles first before you put them on some customers' units and start diagnosing things. So I was down there in the warehouse putting bikes together for a couple of years, and I was working my way into a technician role. And I got into racing Sea-Doos in that time, you know.
Very cool.
Traveled all over the Midwest racing Sea-Doos. And there was a race here in St. Louis that I was practicing for, and I was one of the events I was doing was freestyles, doing tricks on stand-up jet skis. And I backflipped it, and somehow it landed on me. This was the day before the race, and it blew out this shoulder and cut my head open, and had to go to the hospital and get my head stapled up, and my arm couldn't move. So I had to have surgery, which left me with one good arm for a few months while my arm recovered. And at that point, they needed a salesperson. So I went in sales while my arm recovered. But I was good at sales, so they left me there.
Right.
And, all right, cool. I stayed in sales. And changed owners a couple times. I moved up to GM in 2001. I think I was 20 or 21 years old at the time. But yeah, I was GM then, and in '04, the owner was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he owned 2 stores. He owned one in Farmington and the one in Valley Park. And he offered me the one in Valley Park. I had to find a way to buy it. And I took everything I had, mortgaged the house, everything I could scrape together, and found a way to buy it. And I took over in '05. I became the owner.
That's amazing.
That's pretty wild.
It's, we talk about this on other podcasts too, and I isolate it to the car business. It's the car bar. But again, so many similarities between what you do on a daily basis and a typical car dealer. One of the similarities, which is just jumping off the page, is the fact that there is a ladder to climb in your industry the same way there is in automotive. And what I always say in these podcasts, I always talk about how the car business is the best career in America, plain and simple. It's the last industry where you can go from mailroom to CEO. You can't do that with Chase Manhattan Bank anymore. It's not like you can go to these major organizations. I don't care if it's a hospital group or anything. You're not starting at an entry level and someday becoming owner. There's just not that ladder to climb. But, success story to say the least, but also how great that is as far as your legacy, as far as your impact on this industry, to be able to go from being a technician, and a good technician that was obviously earmarked to do great things. An injury forces you into sales, exposes you to the different side, the variable side of things versus the fixed side of things, and end up having the opportunity to buy the store, albeit at a young age.
Yeah.
That aside, you still had to perform. And we do reward, speaking we as in automotive space, we reward production with promotion. And I think that's amazing. I think it's an amazing story.
What do you think? Do you think starting out as the tech contributed to your success as well?
100%. It's not a typical path to, get to the seat where I am. But, starting out in the service department, learning how things work, how the engines work, how the transmissions work, drive systems, all that, how a shop operates, that helped a ton.
Yeah.
And then going over sales, working the sales floor, but working sales with a service background was really beneficial for me. I had, enough of personality. I could talk to people, and, wasn't just, a lot of people aren't gifted with being able to talk to another person on a showroom floor. But I just go out and start talking to people about the machines, but I knew how the thing worked. So I could pop the seat open and show them, like, this is there, this is why this is good, this is why you want this. Because I knew how it worked, I knew how it functioned, and that translated very well for me to the sales floor. And also, when I moved up to the GM, I wore a lot of hats after that too. I would do parts, I would do service manager, I would do finance, I would do whatever I needed to do. I could build the machine, I could fix it, I could go test ride it if I needed to, I could do every facet of the dealership. And I learned all that at a pretty young age, and that really trained me very well to do what I do now. And yeah, it's been very beneficial starting out in service department, I think. And there's a lot of sales guys that I've had that I've known for years. Like, they are not technicians. You do not want them even picking up a screwdriver, because they're going to screw it up. Like, no, sales guys, you stay out of the shop. We don't need you back here. Don't even put a battery in. You're going to just do what you do. But, for me, though, I'm a little different. I can run out there and do the whole thing from start to finish if I have to.
Right. And that probably helped, because I'm guessing you were strapped, like you said, for cash a little bit, so you were the man that did a little bit of everything in that dealership.
Yeah, when I first took over, I was in the warehouse putting bikes together all night long, because I had to do it. I need these machines on the floor. They're sold. Somebody's got to. But I did that when I was an 18-year-old kid, too. Like, I remember working for Bianco. Like, we had a list, like, page long of all the CDs that were going out the next morning. Like, man, somebody's got to put all these together. I guess I'm going to be here all night doing it. So, kid making minimum wage, I'm just sitting in the warehouse all night, getting CDs down, putting them together, getting them running, because that was just what I figured. Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
It's going to be me.
And for the people that don't really understand what you're saying when you're saying building them, how long does it take? How does the machine come? And, you have specialized people just for that job specifically, right?
We have assembly techs, we call them now, and typically they're entry-level technicians, kind of like what I was when I got out of school. And some machines take longer to put together than others. They all generally, back then, they all came in a crate, so you got to uncrate it. And then, like the Sea-Doos, we had to sometimes put the handlebars on the hood, wire up the gauges, hook up the cable, throttle and choke cables, that kind of stuff. ATVs, we'd have to put shocks on, wheels on, handlebars, that kind of stuff. Motorcycles, some of them were kind of built in the crate. Some we got to put the wheels on, fenders, handlebars. But then side-by-sides are a whole different thing now. Some of them, like the cab models, they come rolling. They come off the truck typically. They just roll them out. They're ready to go. But the rest of them, there's a fair bit of assembly we got to do to them. Some of them come in crates. Got to do the shocks, the wheels, the seats, the roll cage, the dash, all those other parts. And some of the big ones, it'll take a couple hours for somebody to put together. And then we got to start accessorizing them too. You know, if it's sold, we got to start putting the windshields on, put the roof on, snow plows, whatever it's getting. So these side-by-sides can take a while to put together now. You know, some of these builds that we do could take days. You know, there's a lot of stuff we'll outfit these things with, and, you know, lights and turn signals and radio and heater. And like it can get pretty intricate building some of those. Not like it was 30 years ago when I started doing it. It was easier then.
That's insane. So aside from the blood, sweat, and tears that you've invested in this company, in the company's own written history, there's a line about how you got approved to buy the dealership, quote, with your vast knowledge of the industry, some help from God. It's the company's own words about you. Talk to me about that line. A lot of dealer principals wouldn't put God in the about page on the website necessarily.
Well, I did. I mean, I was raised a Catholic, went to Catholic school, my grade school and high school. So, you know, I feel fortunate, blessed, you know, to be where I'm at. I don't really, promote that or push it on anybody, but, you know, I am lucky to be where I'm at, you know. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Hard work, luck, and God.
Yeah, there's a lot of it, you know, but I didn't plan on being here. It just worked out that way, you know.
I think that's amazing. I
stumbled across my when I did buy the dealership, I had to write a business plan for the brands. You know, you have to fill out an application to become a dealer, and I was looking at the way that I wrote and the language that I used when I was a 25-year-old kid. Just wow, I can't believe they approved me. But you know, now I'm older, and I look back at it, like the words that I used and how I you know, typed out a paragraph. I'm like, wow, I was a 25-year-old kid talking there. You know,
right.
I'm better now.
If you were the banker sitting on the other side of it, maybe you wouldn't have hit the approve button so
well,
quick.
they did, you know.
Yeah.
I had a pretty decent resume by that point. You know, I'd started in the industry in 95, and by this point it was 2005, so I had 10 years worth of industry experience, and I wasn't just buying a new commodity. It was an existing business that I was just taking over, you know. So I didn't just walk into the bank and say, hey, I got an idea. I'm going to open a motorcycle store, and 100%. You guys are going to fund me on it.
That's a great differentiation.
Yeah.
You got a fleet of brands under your roof that hate each other in every other market. Polaris, Can-Am, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki. When the OEM reps come to town, do they know they're standing 20 feet away from their arch competitor?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And most of the time they're open to hearing what's going on. What are we seeing? What's working? What's not? Most time. Some of them get kind of tired of hearing the same thing over and over, but
right.
Usually they want to know what's working, you know.
And what's working for the competitor, right? I mean, that's the context of what they want to understand.
Mm-hmm. What models are hot? Where are we missing out? What promotions are hot?
Who takes feedback the best out of all those? I don't want you to call out one that doesn't take it well necessarily, but which one of your brands takes that feedback the way that they probably should? You
know, they all listen to it, and they, you know, when I meet with the reps, they take their notes and they pass it up the chain of command. I don't know what happens from there, but it's a pretty common thread that I say to all of them, and we started with that. The CF Motos have been really dominating for a couple of years now, and everything they're doing has been great. Their whole vehicle lineup, like their ATVs sell great, every one of them does. The side-by-sides are all doing great. The sports segment, you know, you talk about that, the Z10, it's really new. We haven't gotten any yet. We should be getting ours soon, but I rode one a couple of years ago when they first unveiled it. Cool machine. Great value. I think it's going to do well. But the sports segment of side-by-sides is pretty slow in this region. And it's gotten deteriorated more and more every year for us. The utility side-by-side, the working vehicles that have the dump bed, you sit up kind of straight in it, those are really what we sell lots and lots of. But the sports stuff like the Polaris Razors, the Can-Am Mavericks, the Honda Talons, those kind of vehicles are few and far between sales now.
Somewhat niche.
Yeah.
Do they do better in other markets?
Yeah, Southwest U.S. they do really well.
Okay.
there's a lot more desert area
say,
down
yeah,
there,
that's the
and people
desert
take
thing.
these things out, and that's what they do in the desert. And you can't really take a utility vehicle out in the desert, but we don't really have desert here. We don't have a ton of wide open spaces. But then secondly to that, there's not a cabbed out sport side-by-side that has air conditioning and heat either,
Right.
which is really our hot segment now. Those are only offered in the utility side-by-sides, and then there's a couple kind of in-betweeners. The Polaris Expedition is kind of a sportier utility vehicle, but it's not like a Razor or a Can-Am Maverick. It's in between. That's about
Gotcha.
the closest thing.
Give me that elevator version. Who is John Konersmann? How does a 17-year-old kid from Missouri at a Missouri motorsports shop end up owning 3 dealerships now and managing, is it 85 people?
No, we're about 50.
50 people? 30 years later.
Well, it started small. When I took over, it was me and about 6 or 7 employees. I had one sales guy, one finance guy, a couple parts guys, a couple service guys, and it was just me and those guys. And we had 4 lines: Kawasaki, Suzuki, Polaris, and Sea-Doo. And it grew. It got bigger and bigger every year. And we moved from Valley Park to Fenton in 2009. My lease was up at the Valley Park store, which was the original store in '93 when Bianco opened there. But my lease was up finally in '09. Moved to Fenton, got out on the interstate. I thought that was going to be a really good move because then we're highway visible. We're outside a little Valley Park, everybody can see us on Highway 44. The traffic
Right.
count there is huge. And kind of grew it from there. We started getting busier and busier, needed more staff, needed more technicians, more parts guys, more sales guys, and it got bigger. Really didn't pick up a whole lot of other lines. Can-Am kind of came into the picture, which was part of Sea-Doo, BRP. They branched out and had their own vehicles then. And then 2013, I had the bright idea. So, you know what, there's a open point for Polaris in the St. Charles area. I'm going to open a store up there. So Polaris, I got with them, talked with dealer development. I said, yeah, okay, good idea. There's not a dealer there now. Cool, go for it. So I found a location. We picked it out, went through the whole process, and I opened another store. And we officially opened, I think, in 2014. It was a brand new facility, and started small as a little 5,000 square foot building that we were in with just Polaris. And, that one did really well right out of the gate. Started selling units, started with a small staff, and it got bigger and bigger. We added CF Moto a couple years later, added a couple other smaller lines to it, some go-karts and stuff like that, and it got bigger. And in 2019, the owner of the dealer in Chesterfield asked me if I'd like to own 3 stores. I said, nah, I don't want to own 3 stores. I'm too busy. No way. But thanks for the call. I'll see if I can think anybody help you out. But then I called him later that night. I said, you know what, let's talk. So we got together, talked about it, and a few months later, here we are. Now I own 3 stores. And I never planned it that way, but, with that store, that kind of, I looked at that one like it was in Chesterfield. So it's between my O'Fallon store and my Fenton store. If anyone else is in there, then, gosh, it's like separating my 2 stores. So this could work out. And then it would also give me access to Honda and Yamaha that I didn't previously have at my other stores.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, all right, cool. So then with that, I'll have like every major brand, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, Polaris, Sea-Doo, Can-Am, and now CF Moto too. Like, okay, I'll kind of have everything if I need it. All right, so I found a way to make that work, and I own that one too now.
Any thoughts on more?
On more?
Yeah.
You never know. I need another store like I need a hole in my head, but I'm always opportunistic.
Right.
If there's something out there that makes sense and it's going to work, and the opportunity is there for me to make something good out of it and it'll work, all right, I'll entertain that. But I'm not out there trying to open more
Merger
stores yet.
and acquire.
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
3
Would it
stores
have?
gets you busy.
Would you look outside of? I don't mean to put you on the spot like that. It's not even part of our script, but would you look outside because of the name? Obviously, would you look outside of St. Louis?
I don't think so. No, I still visit all 3 of the stores pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So I'm there. I gotta, make sure what's going on and keep tabs on things. And if it were something far out of state or even far out of St. Louis where it's, a long drive, I'm not too interested in that. I I like having them all close, and my 3 stores share all the time. Like there's constantly drivers going back and forth, sharing parts, sharing vehicles, you know, and that's helpful for me. You know,
Absolutely.
we don't have to keep continuing to buy more and more parts and accessories. If I already have it in stock at one store, we can share with the other one. Or if we need a specific color of vehicle and at this location, but they don't have it, the other store does, then we just go pick it up from that store, bring it back. So we do our own dealer trades. It's kind of all 3 of the stores share pretty well, except for those Highlands. They don't really like sharing those.
I could imagine. I could imagine
Everything
there'd be
else.
some pieces that not today. Not
Yeah.
even if you are a brother. We're not doing that deal. In a car dealership, technicians almost never become owners. That fixed side, that fixed ladder to climb is few and far between. It happens in power sports, and I think it probably happens more often than it does in retail automotive. Do you agree? Let me ask it this way. Is power sports actually a better path for a tech to end up owning something, or is starting out on the sales side in your industry a better path to go?
Sales is probably better because you're introduced to the front end of the house, and you know, sales is where the dealership is made. You know, that's where our customers come from. That's where most of the income's generated is on the sales floor.
Right.
Typically, your service staff, they stay in the service department. I had a very unique opportunity with my injury that plopped me in sales very unexpectedly, and it worked out. But most of the time, you know, you pick a path and you stick with it. And you know, had I not hurt my shoulder, if I would have landed that backflip how I had intended, I'd probably still be a service technician today, and I'd be, you know, I'm probably a pretty good technician at this point. But
Right.
you know, I probably would have stayed doing that, and
likely on the X Games.
yeah, maybe. Who knows?
I've got a different question. With that ladder that you climbed, and when you got promoted general manager at a very young age, that's a much different job. Now you're looking at the P&L, not a parts book, not a service guide. Who taught you the number side, and was that the hardest thing to learn?
Yeah, so I've got a good accountant. He was my parents' accountant when I turned old enough to start working. He started doing my taxes. Doug's been great. He's been my accountant ever since, and he's taught me a lot of it. But, you know, a lot of it I just kind of had to teach myself. Like, I didn't know what a balance sheet was when I was filling out all the applications for the manufacturers to become a dealer. Like, they want to see financial statements and P&Ls and balance sheets. Like, what's a balance sheet? I don't have that. I don't even know what that is. So, yeah, I had to learn that. I had to learn the accounting software, and I'd still do all of that today. I do all of the payroll. I do all the accounting. I do all the bill pay. That's all still my task. But I taught myself very early, and I'm still doing it now.
There's something to be said about the previous owner. Obviously, you know, God forbid anybody suffers a health issue like that. But that owner that had watched you elevate yourself and watched you promote yourself, because that's what it was. But at that age, what did that conversation, walk me through that conversation where the owner saw something in you, saw enough in you to have that conversation with you and offer you the store?
Sure. So Barry Fagley was his name. Good dude. He, like I said, he owned the dealership in Farmington for a number of years, and the store that I was at in Valley Park closed very abruptly in 2000. And I ended up at Munganast Honda for a brief period of time, and then I heard through the grapevine that it was reopening, and the guy that owns the dealer in Farmington was opening it up again. Oh, cool. I know somebody there that used to work with me at the Valley Park store. I called him up. Hey, I hear you guys are buying the Valley Park store, reopening it. Yeah, you ought to come down here and talk to Barry. I'm like, all right, cool. So I went down and talked with Barry, and I had met him once before doing a dealer trade a year before or something, and I didn't know him very well, but
Right.
sat down and talked with him, and yeah, he needed people. All right, cool. When are we doing this? And you know, we got a time frame together, and we reopened in the spring of I think it was 2001. And I came back, and everyone that he hired was from Farmington, and they were all driving up there, and I was the only guy that was from this area, and I had worked at this dealership already for a couple of years. And you know, he's a great guy, but you know, he lived in Farmington. He was running that store too, and he wasn't at the Valley Park store as much.
Right.
You know, we might have seen him once a week or every other week. He'd come up, say hi, what's going on here? All right, cool. Goes back to Farmington. And I talked to him several times a day, and about what we're doing, what we needed, what we're seeing, and but he didn't hire me as a GM. I just came on as sales. But then with him not being there, and there was just a lack of leadership at this dealership, and like nobody was in charge. So finally, after a couple months, I said, "Listen, man, somebody's got to be in charge here. I know I'm young, but I can do this. I've been here since 1996. I know how to do service. I can do parts. I can do sales. I can do everything here. But somebody's got to be in charge and take over here because you're not here." All right, cool. You can run it. So he made me the GM. Awesome, cool. So then I started bringing in some of my people that I know that I've worked with in the past, and started kind of building my team. And we're, getting bigger and bigger, and, growing this thing up. And then 2004, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and really scary thing. He wasn't very old. He was 42 or 44 when he was diagnosed. Had a seizure in the middle of the night, and went to the hospital, and he had a softball-sized tumor in the back of his head. And they said, "You got 3 years." Wow, terrible. Well, then he has to start kind of figuring out what he's going to do, And he, knowing that he lives in Farmington, his wife lives in Farmington, he asked me if I had an interest in buying a store. I said, "Well, I don't know how I can do it, but let me try." And I found a way to do it, and I pulled it off. And his wife is still the part owner of that dealer in Farmington, with the GM of that store when I was the GM of the Valley Park store. They're co-owners of that store, and they opened another store in Festus now, and they're still good friends of mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're close. I don't Janet Fegley, I don't see her very much anymore, but she's a sweetheart. Still love her pieces. And Josh was the GM of that store when I was the GM of the Valley Park store, and he and I are still buddies. We're close. We see each other at dealer meetings. We call each other and
That's
laugh
awesome.
and joke, and yeah, he's one of my buddies. But yeah, Barry was a really good dude, and it's heartbreaker. It was really sad. I get emotional all the time thinking about it.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But
That's great, brother.
Yeah.
Share that. I mean, we talk about this in podcasts too, and this is the epitome of what we discuss when we talk about legacy. Nothing gets me more excited than to, as a general manager, executive manager, partner in a store, to be able to see one of my people get promoted to a general manager, executive manager, whatever that next level is, and get that text message. You're talking about somebody that gave you an opportunity, saw something in you to be able to provide your legacy going forward as well.
yeah.
And again, you paying those roses and getting emotional. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. He, I didn't give him much choice. He kind of knew somebody had to be running this place because
Right.
he wasn't there enough. And, I was probably the best opportunity that he had to put somebody in charge there because I lived closer and nobody else did. And I knew what needed to happen here. I knew where we had to go to get supplies, or go to get propane for the forklift, or where we got to go to water test the Sea-Doo. Like, I knew all this stuff because I've
Right.
been there,
Do you think that what keeps you going to every store every week?
It's I don't have to do all that anymore. I've got people in place, and a lot of guys have been with me for a long time. That I don't have to keep my thumb on everything. There's people that do that for me. But when we do something different, I'm involved with that, or like when we move to a new location or something. Yeah, I got to get people involved, and here's where we're doing this. Here's how we're doing it.
Right.
Here's what I want to happen. But the guys carry it out, and we move on, and here we go. But
Barry seeing something in you, the banks approving it, those are all great things, and those dominoes all have to fall. But the dominoes that really have to co-sign on something like this is Kawasaki, Suzuki, Polaris, Sea-Doo, Can-Am. Every one of those manufacturers had to sign off on you. That is an absolutely enormous amount of belief in a 26-year-old man. Why do you think they all said yes? And it obviously wasn't necessarily your penmanship or your navigating a paragraph as you typed it, right? We've established that.
we didn't have ChatGPT then, so I had to write it all
exactly.
myself.
So, yeah, I get it.
But by this point, I had developed a bit of a resume. I had 10 years of experience in the dealership. Like I said, so it was an existing business. It wasn't just something that I had a bright idea to do. It had been an established dealership for over a decade, and I had experience with all of those manufacturers. The reps I have known for years.
Right.
You know, the Sea-Doo rep, the Kawasaki rep, the Suzuki rep, the Polaris rep. They'd known me. I'd worked with these guys for a number of years, and they had, you know, input with the dealer development teams on, hey, can this kid do it? And well, yeah, they said, yeah, he's been doing this for a while. He knows what he's doing. You know, if he's got the financial assets to be able to pull this off, then they didn't go for it, and they approved me.
When they co-signed it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You have 3 stores. They don't all look the same, obviously. Fenton being the original, 25 years in market. 2 different locations, though, correct, as you illustrated?
Yeah, started in Valley Park and moved in '09 to where it is now.
Okay. O'Fallon opened in 2014, Chesterfield in 19, and Chesterfield's the largest of the 3, correct?
Size-wise, actually, the O'Fallon store we moved to St. Peter's about a year ago.
Okay.
That store is the biggest one.
Gotcha.
But,
okay. Talk to me about the deliberate differences between those 3 stores, and why aren't they simply just clones of each other?
Well, one thing that I've tried to do with each of my stores, I think having it on the highway is a very big benefit, because your vehicles
Absolutely.
are right there. People drive by. You got more traffic count on an interstate than you do any other highway. So just by virtue of being there and having your vehicles outside, people see you. And power sport vehicles are something that typically turns ahead. You know, it's different than a car. You see cars everywhere. You know, you're driving down the highway though, and you see a side by side on giant tires sitting there. Like, oh, what is that? That's cool. So when it comes time to, you know, get into that, you want one. You kind of hopefully consumers would remember, hey, there's a guy out here on the highway that I saw. Let's go find them. That's kind of been my my whole idea with the 3 stores. You know, as I wanted to always stay on the highway and have that visibility. But other than that, you know, it's kind of just been how can I make this work in the space that we have? You know, the original store in Valley Park was in a multi-tenant plaza. That's where Bianco started out. And I ended up taking that over. All right, it's not ideal, you know, it's not a freestanding building, but we made it work. And then when my lease was up, it's time to relocate. All right, found another place that'll work for us. It's a similar size, but a similar cost of rent. But we're on the interstate. Okay, again, it's not ideal, but we can afford this. Let's make it work. Cool. So we had to modify the building, modify it to for our use. You know, the doors have to be bigger, and got to have certain garage doors, and got to have some outside storage for things that don't fit inside. Got to have warehouse space, but you know, we adapted. We made it work. When I opened the O'Fallon store, same thing. We took a little bitty store and we started out small. I'm like, all right, let's get started here. Let's start small. Let's plug in some units. We'll start growing this thing. As we get bigger and bigger, we'll expand, and we did. You know, we expanded that store from originally it was 4,500 square feet, and then we added another 3,000 to it, and then we added another 3,000 square foot warehouse, and then we went into the old Bellman Carnection building, which it's 16,000 square feet, huge store. Service department's huge. Like, service guys love it. They don't know what to do with all that space. We didn't have that at the previous store. And Chesterfield, though, the Chesterfield building has always been a Powersport dealership. It originally opened in '99, and I ended up buying that building from the original owner. And I still talk to him periodically. But yeah, that store was built to be a Powersport dealership, and it's, you know, similar in design to what I have at the other stores. You know, we have our showroom and our parts room and our service department, and you know, it's the same kind of concept. You know, nothing's really that different, just different location. You know, we kind of go by the same philosophy, same rules at all 3 of the stores, and the guys all, you know how we operate.
So the only differences then would be the expansion and how they organically grow, just in volume, and volume dictates almost.
Yeah, and a lot of the lines do that too. You know,
Yeah.
some brands are stronger than others, and some we see a lot of growth in, some we're not. You know, so you know the good ones we're focusing a lot of our interest in, like CF Moto, for example. We're putting a lot of our advertising in our showroom, advertisements inside the showroom into CF Moto to build brand awareness for that brand, because it's been so good for us.
Yeah.
You know, and really there's not a lot of CF Moto dealers around, but the ones that are, they're all, you know, good dealers. They're friends of mine. We get along, we trade. They're all holding margins. Everything's going great with CF Moto.
You know, like when the automotive side, you typically have one manufacturer per building. you're running into 2 to 3, maybe 4, depending on which store it is in each building. Everybody wants their space.
They do.
How do you kind of navigate telling them yes, no? You're not building onto more of your showroom.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of allocate that space for them?
It's a delicate balance, and a lot of it's outside too. We display a lot of our vehicles outside, the side-by-sides in particular. They're just so big, they take up a lot of space, and to show all those inside, it takes up a lot of showroom space. So indoors, we kind of, we have our motorcycles and our watercraft and the dirt bikes and ATVs too, and they all have a pretty equal share. But our bigger brands are going to get a bigger slice of the pie. And for a long time, Polaris was our number one. We had more Polarises than anything else by a mile. But now it's CF Moto, and we have a lot of CF Motos. And I'm pretty honest with the reps. I'll tell them, yeah, we're selling a lot of these. We're going to show a lot of them, but they're also giving us a lot of reason to. They came up with some showroom enhancement programs, and there was a lot of benefits for us to do that made a lot of business sense for us to do. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm totally on board with that. This is a brand that's growing that we're going to invest some money in them. We're going to get it back. Cool. So
do you handle all the OEM dialogue, or do you let your managers handle that at store level?
I handle a lot of it. I still talk with all the reps on a pretty regular basis. Some more than others. The brands that we do a lot with, I'm on with them pretty regularly. But yeah, I still talk with all the reps a lot. Some,
gotcha.
If I'm not available, they'll talk with the managers at that location. But
service side is often where Powersports stores live or die, obviously. Fenton's 63026, O'Fallon is, and that's changed a little bit here too, 63366, Chesterfield 63005. 3 different service catchments. How do you keep the service experience consistent across all these 3 buildings and having the fixed background you have? I assume
Sure.
That's the case.
Yeah, we try and keep things consistent. We have the same labor rate at all 3 stores, and we try and keep the same cost for a service as, if we're doing a tire at one store, it's the same as a tire at this store. If we're doing a full service on a Polaris Ranger 1000 at Fenton, it's the same price as it's going to be at Chesterfield, the same price as it's going to be at St. Peter's. And we try and have that consistency going with all 3 stores. And, again, it's the same kind of playbook that we have at all 3 of the stores, how we schedule our appointments, when we bring them in, we diagnose them, call with an estimate, get approval, order the parts, get it fixed, call them when it's done. It's, kind of the same thing we've done for a number of years. It's the way I've kind of always done it from the start of it, and we've just kind of kept doing it that way. And, now that it's gotten bigger and bigger, we've had to evolve, and I've had to put people in charge of kind of overseeing all this to make sure that all 3 of the dealerships are talking together, and all 3 of the service managers are talking and doing the same thing. All 3 of the parts managers are talking and doing the same thing. The sales guys are all getting together, and we're all sharing the same data, and we can all see what our sale prices are and what the promotions are, so that they're all communicating, and there's consistency between 3 stores.
Right.
We use Google Sheets a lot now. I love them. I use it for all kinds of stuff. It's great because if I make an amendment to something on the Google Sheet, instantly everybody can see it. We don't have to email anything. It's all right there. Everybody can pull it up on their phone and see what it is. Cool. We're all on the same page as soon as there's a change. But, yeah, that is something that we focus on, is trying to keep consistency between all 3 of the stores.
That's amazing. For the car dealers listening, and I don't want you to get specific here, this question is not meant to be edgy. For the car dealers listening, walk them through the Powersports P&L. What % of your gross comes from new units, used units, parts, service, and finance? And in your opinion, how is that different from a car store?
I've never worked a day in a car store, so I've been into one when I was working at Munganast, and we had to go back and forth a little bit, but I've never sold a car. Mm-hmm. So from what I gather, the front-end margins in the automotive industry are really thin.
Yep.
And we're kind of getting to that with a lot of powersport vehicles too, where a lot of dealers are just selling at invoice, and only profit potential is the holdback, and then whatever you can do on the back end. And that's becoming a bigger and bigger part of powersports. A lot of dealers are going that route, where it's it's a race to sell it at cost, and then you got to hope that you can get them make some back end potential off of it. So we're seeing that a lot. As far as the breakdown of profit center wise, I don't know if automotive is the same way, but most of our profit source at the dealership comes from new vehicle sales. We still make decent front end margins on most of the vehicles we sell. Back end is still a big segment of what we do too. We don't quite have what seems like all of the training that the automotive world gets. I know a lot of the automotive F&I guys have been doing this for a long time, and they're good at it. And a lot of times in Powersports, we don't. We have, there are classes we send our guys to, and try and get them to brush up on their skills. But I do feel that it's a different kind of environment than an automotive sale. And I don't think we're doing as much as the automotive world is in the back end.
I will paint you a picture in automotive, and you can respond accordingly too. But in my opinion, in my experience, what we're looking at now in automotive is a reliance almost completely, 75% of all variable gross profit comes from the F&I side. And that includes new, used, and finance. 75% attributed to that. What good dealers, best practices, what benchmark dealers are striving for is fixed coverage as close to 100% as possible. Meaning, if my fixed departments, parts and service, can cover all of my bills, right, all of my expenses, I'm healthy and I can operate under a volume pretense on the new car side or on the new vehicle side and take loser deals and everything else. It's not just margins are compressed, it's margins are nothing. Depending upon the brand, and again, we might get some hate on this on YouTube, but depending upon the brand, you're literally looking for $0 out of your new car department when you forecast a month. Zero profit out of new cars. You make your money in used cars, and you make your money in finance. And you're saying the opposite of that. You're saying that you have to be strong in the fixed side for sure. That has to cover your bills, at least to some extent. And you're making a majority of your money on the new vehicle sales.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you say your ratio new to used is?
We don't do a whole lot of used. We do some, but it's a small segment. It's probably less than 10% of our vehicle sales are pre-owned. That's overwhelmingly new. And that's kind of always been the case for us in Powersports. And we've tried to get into the used market pretty aggressively before, and we've gone out and tried to buy units secondhand. We've gone to auctions and gotten units, and I usually end up losing out on auction units, but some work out, some don't. But if we get in a good trade, we get into it right, we can turn that and make a profit off of it. But we don't have a whole lot of that. And gosh, automotive is different than Powersports in that regard. A lot of people are not wanting a used off-road vehicle.
Right.
These things are run in a rough environment. ATVs and side-by-sides in particular, which is our biggest segments, off-road vehicles. People take these things out and they run them through water, sand, snow, ice, bouncing them off of trees and rocks and flipping them over. They're run hard,
right?
And for a consumer that's looking to buy something like that, a toy, they don't want something that they're going to go out and it's going to leave them stranded on the back 40 somewhere. They don't know how to get out. Cars, I guess it's a little different. I don't think cars have as much of a breakdown failure like a side-by-side would, and if it does break down, well, you get it towed and you go have it fixed. But a side-by-side, if you're way far away and the thing breaks down, you got to have somebody else with another side-by-side that's going to tow you out.
Yeah.
Or if you're on a Sea-Doo and you buy a 10-year-old Sea-Doo and it breaks down and you're floating down river, well, then what do? You got to find somebody to tow you back. So I don't know, a little different there, I guess, with Powersports than automotive. But we do a lot more of the new than the pre-owned. And from a profit potential standpoint, we're still doing decent front end margins on just about everything we sell, and there's still back end stuff. We still have holdback. We still have the F&I office we're making profits on. But we're still pretty good at holding our front end margins, and we're staying profitable there. And Parts does their thing, service does theirs. Parts has been kind of a struggling thing for a number of years in Powersports, with the advent of internet. I'm sure we're all guilty of it too. It's easy to jump on your phone and get whatever and have it sent to your door. Mm-hmm. So there's fewer and fewer people coming into the dealership buying parts to fix their own machines. They'll just order it online. But, there are still some that it's more of a benefit for them to be able to go into the dealership and talk to somebody about it and look at the schematic, and if they need some advice on it, we're there to offer it. If they need service for it, obviously we do that. And there's a lot of people that don't even have any interest in touching these vehicles at all. Like, nope, not messing with it. Drop it off. You guys
Correct.
fix it. Tell me when it's done.
And I think, from the sound of it too, and just based on what we're talking about, the new technology in some of these units, I think that's probably where the evolution is going. Like, I would predict, and again, I have no authority to predict, but if I were to predict, I would suggest, obviously, that with the technology, your service and parts departments are only going to get bigger and bigger as time goes on.
Yeah, service definitely. Service is, we've only got so much room for so many technicians, and every year it gets, we're backed up in the spring and summertime, and we're less backed up in the winter, but that's been the case for decades now. I could probably have enough work for several more technicians, but I don't have the space to put them anywhere. But as these things start getting more and more advanced, people just won't be able to work on them anymore. And now, like, I'm sure automotive same way, like, you've got to have the manufacturer's proprietary software to link up with the vehicle
100%.
to be able to do any of the diagnostic on it. And if you don't have that, you're really limited with what you can do with it. You're kind of limited to some of the more physical drivetrain aspects, on the side-by-sides in particular. Like, you can do drive shafts and half shafts and hubs and bearings, that kind of stuff. But anything with your fuel management system, your fuel injection, your fuel pump, your ignition, any of that, you've got to have the software system to link up with it, and that's only available through dealers. Oops, sorry.
And that's aside from the infotainment stuff that they're putting in these units now too, and all the technology that they're putting in it for luxury.
Touch screens, audio systems, GPS. There's a lot of it in there now, and you can't do anything with it without having that computer to link up with it.
So needless to say, we just got to talk to all these dealers and make sure that they hold their pricing consistently and don't become like automotive.
Yeah.
Seasonality. A car dealer sells all 12 months. You sell most of your entire year between March and August. How does that reshape everything? How does that work for cash flow, staffing, inventory, marketing?
We're used to it. Been doing it for a while, so most of the staff understands that too. The sales guys are on commission. They understand the busy months. Where you're going to grow your hay is March, April, May, June.
Absolutely.
And come end of July, things start to kind of come down a little bit. Usually, like we see it every year, the time when kids go back to school in August is when the traffic really kind of shuts down. Like, everybody goes into a whole different mindset. We're not looking at toys anymore. We're not going down to the lake. We're not going, taking out kids going out riding. We got to get these kids their books and their backpacks and get them set up for school. And, a lot of people have kids, so that's kind of their focus, getting these kids back to school, getting them into their new, back into the routine, and the toys kind of take a back seat for a little bit. But, a couple weeks after that, we start getting back into it again. Deer season starts creeping up, and the hunters start coming out looking for new side-by-sides and ATVs, and then we start picking that up again. But for a lot of what we sell, the watercraft and the street bikes, those are only a spring and summer thing.
Absolutely.
They're not really riding those in the fall and winter, so our window of opportunity for those is kind of closed after August. We won't do a whole lot of those, but we still do the off-road stuff year-round, and it's less in the in the really cold months, but we're still selling year-round. I know a lot of Harley dealers, which we don't do, but dealers that only do Harley in the wintertime, they have not a lot to do.
Right.
People don't ride Harleys in the winter, so they might have layoffs. They might people take vacations, long vacations, but we don't have that. We stay busy year-round. We're just less busy in the really cold months, but we still have.
There's no downsizing, seasonal downsizing of staff. There's
not really, no. Like the assembly techs, we might go one or two lighter. We normally have about 4 of them at each location, or depending on where we're at. But we might have 1 or 2 less, depending on that time of year. Because we're not selling as much. We don't need as much of a staff, but we still keep the same number of technicians and salespeople and parts people. We really don't lay anybody off. Just keep everybody busy.
As the owner, do you push during those months more on service to keep, cash flow coming through the building, that kind of stuff?
In the lean months?
In the lean months?
They're still busy. We're just not backed up as far in the service department. Like this time of year, we're usually backed up 3 to 4 weeks typically, so we got a backlog. And then when we get to January, we're not backed up. Usually we can get them in pretty quick, same day sometimes, depending on what it is. But there's still other jobs that keep the technicians busy. We don't have layoffs. It's still full time for everybody.
That's awesome.
Not as much of a fever pitch in the colder months.
It's a great message for people listening, for sure, that are interested in joining this industry or interested in this industry. I think it's an important differentiation that you just made, because I would assume a lot of people thought, and maybe even myself, that maybe there was a layoff, maybe there was a downtime, and there's only so many boat shows in February and stuff like that you can attend.
And 20, 30 years ago, it used to be worse. In January and February, there was a lot less to do. But now that that was when we were also doing a lot of watercraft and street bikes. But now that side-by-sides have really been our big thing for a number of years.
It's a game changer.
They sell year-round.
Yeah.
And now that we're doing cab models that you can ride year-round, people are buying these things in January when there's snow on the ground. They want to put plows on them. They want to clear their driveway. It's a popular thing that we do. But we do sell a lot more in the warmer months because, we're still selling the side-by-sides and ATVs in the spring and summer, but then we're also adding in, we got the watercraft people.
And my mind goes to, John, too, talking about like the level of luxury and the amount of investment that these people are making in these vehicles. They're usually the people that stick pretty consistently to a trade cycle, which means that they're not necessarily trading when that vehicle's wore out. They're trading when that luxury UTV cab is, when there's something cooler that's arrives or something cooler's on the market. So I would assume, I would think that, and those people aren't necessarily, they're at an income level maybe that seasonality doesn't really matter, right? It's when does the next cool thing come out?
Yeah. There's a lot of people doing that, and like I was saying with the cab stuff, there's a lot of people that are wanting to trade in their non-cab machine that they bought a couple years ago. They want that cab.
I would assume so.
And, their family's squawking at them. It's too hot to go out riding. We want to get one with a cab like everybody else has.
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to trade in and get something with a cab.
And most people that have those have other properties where the vehicle's rested at, and they need to use that vehicle year-round, but they chose not to during winter. Or maybe just dad who was bundled up with gear that I brought down from North Dakota with me.
And do you see a lot of guys, or a lot of families even, upgrading? They start out with a non-cab or start out with a small bike, and then I'm going to ride this for a year, see how I like it.
Yeah.
And then next year they come and they trade that in for something bigger, or a crew, or a cab, or is that kind of how you see a lot of this?
Yeah, a lot of them will start with a smaller side-by-side to bring the kids along or something, and, kind of dip their toe in the water, see if there's something they like, something they enjoy, and then they're back in a couple of years. Yeah, they want to get something bigger, something with a cab, something faster. Yeah. And a lot of times, too, if they got a bunch of kids, they'll want to add something else to it, like we want to get a go-kart or something for the kids to go tool around on, or a little dirt bike for, kids to play on so they're not stuck in the side-by-side with everybody else. They want to go have some of their own fun and be independent and,
or not
hit
play
some jumps or something.
Damn video games or anything
else. Yeah, no doubt. Getting them outside, getting them playing.
I think that's a huge part of it. So that leads us into parts and accessories. In Powersports, the accessory business can be the whole story on a unit. Somebody buys fill in the model here and drops another X amount of thousands of dollars in the parts and accessories catalog. How much of your gross on the fixed side, maybe as a percentage or maybe just as a illustration, is attributed to P&A?
It's a decent amount. We're doing probably some of these side-by-sides, we're getting $10,000 in accessories added onto them.
It sounds like the old Harley Davidson model, doesn't
Kind of.
it?
Yeah, and I've never sold a Harley either. I've never been in that field, but there's a lot of Harley guys that are adding all kinds of chrome and windshields and bags, and I don't even know what they add. That's a language I don't speak.
In a previous life, I only bought them. I never sold them, but that was usually the case. You didn't necessarily double your investment, but you got
customized
close.
It and you made it how you wanted it.
Correct.
And that's part of what we do with side-by-sides too. That's part of the fun of it, making it yours and building it how you want it with the stuff you want on it and the lights you want it and the colors you want it. And that's kind of fun. You want people that when they go out in their garage and look at it, they listen, yeah, that thing's cool. That's awesome. I'm so glad I built it that way. And they're proud of it. They want to show their friends, look how cool this thing is. It's got all these buttons, look at all this shit. I don't even know what it does, but it's there, And that's fun to do. And a lot of side-by-side people are doing that, and like I was saying before too, like on the other segments that we have, the watercraft, the motorcycles and ATVs too, like there's not a lot of that kind of customization and building
Right.
going into it because there's really not a lot that people would do to them, you know. Watercraft, there is no really accessories other than sometimes we'll make them faster, but then they buy a cover and trailer. That's
Yeah.
about it. You
Yeah.
know? The dirt bike guys, there's really not a whole lot of stuff that you add to those either. The street bikes, there's a little bit of stuff we could do. You know, most of what we do is sport bikes. The cruiser kind of bikes that look like Harleys, that's a pretty,
Baggers and stuff like that.
yeah, that's a pretty dead segment from metric dealers, we call it, like I am. Most of the manufacturers don't even make anything like that anymore. Or very, very few if they do. But
It's struggling, and again, what we alluded to earlier is that divestiture from Indian with Polaris too. I mean, that is a market that is struggling, to
Yeah.
say the least.
yeah, definitely. But
You're-
the sport bikes are doing decent, you know, the little fast ones. We have a lot of lines of them. So the 4 Japanese, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, we have all those, plus CF Moto's in it now, and they make a really strong sport bike lineup. And then we also picked up the Italian bikes too. So Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, Vespa, and Piaggio.
No way.
That's all one big happy family under
Yeah.
the Piaggio umbrella. You get one, you get them all. And really just one of the Aprilias. I think they're cool. But now we got Aprilia and Moto Guzzi and Vespa.
So literally the toy store of toy stores. I mean,
We got a
adding
lot.
that's everything.
We got a lot. There's a couple out there we don't have,
Sure.
but we got a lot of them.
But you have in every segment. I mean, you have a toy available.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. Your service department in Fenton runs different hours than the showroom, Tuesday through Saturday, closed Sunday and Monday. That's a very deliberate schedule, obviously.
That's at all the stores, though.
That's at all the stores.
Yep.
What did you learn, or what taught you to do that? What was the drive behind freeing up that schedule?
Well, the close on Monday thing is pretty common in powersport dealerships.
Okay.
More than half of the powersport dealerships are closed on Sunday and Monday. And that's what I put in. We were doing that kind of back and forth a little bit before I was the owner. But then when I became the owner, yeah, we're closing on Mondays. I like having a 2-day weekend.
Yeah.
The staff does too. You know, even if it's not Saturday, Sunday, we're still getting Sunday, Monday. You get a chance to get away from the dealership, recharge batteries, you know, do your home stuff, take care of business at home, or you got to go grocery store, you got to go to the bank or whatever. You've got your free day on Monday to go do all that. You know, you get to get away from it for a little bit, and you're not stuck there all the time. Before I was the owner for a while, we were open 6 days a week, and you know, it never failed on my day off. People were coming in that I had talked to previously, and then they're calling me like, "Hey, what'd you tell these people? Where's this? Where's that?" I'll just come in anyway, and then you're still tied to it. But if we're closed on Sunday, Monday, everybody's got the same hours. We don't have to, you know, kind of stagger the staff, and then we're short one day because 2 guys are off that day and they weren't on the other day. And I think it's easier just to have kind of universal. We're all just closed Sunday, Monday. So
I think it's brilliant. I think the automotive industry could learn a little bit there.
I didn't come up with it though. It was around long before I was.
I'll attribute it to you, and I'll try to impart it on automotive with whatever voice I have. The company's About page on your website has this line that says, John still employs many of the people that were here when he started in 1997. Makes for a very close-knit group, quote, unquote. That's the story. And again, we're segueing into culture and the long-term team members that you do have. Talk to me about that. How many of your 1996 era teammates are still on the payroll?
Only one of them now. One was up until about a year ago. Another one was. I don't know. There's another one. Okay, there's 2 now. And there was a third. But I'm still, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm still friends with everybody that was here in 96 when I started. Like, I've got everybody's cell phone. I could call them up right now and see what's going on. Like, I still communicate with these people on a pretty regular basis, and I still see several of them periodically. A couple of them are still working for me. But, yeah, I've made a lot of friends. You know, I haven't burned really very many bridges at all. But I get along with people, and, you know, we're still buddies. I still keep in touch with these people.
More to the point is you have tenure at your stores, and there is no industry. Well, I shouldn't say no industry. I'm speaking a little bit out of pocket there, but Powersports notoriously does have one of the highest turnover rates in retail. Techs get poached constantly. What is your retention playbook? How do you maybe talk about and touch on the culture that you build in these stores to make people want to stay? But how do you actively make sure that you keep employees, in your house?
I'm a pretty easygoing guy.
Right.
I
think our viewers will see that. I think they're really going to enjoy this conversation.
I'm not a screaming, yelling guy, and I don't micromanage, but I get involved with things. If there's something that we got to address, I'll gather the guys and say, hey, listen, we got to do it this way instead of this way. You're doing it this way, and there's a better way to do it. Let's go this route. And, I talk to the guys the way I would want to be addressed, and I was on the other side of the desk for a number of years, so I know how that is. I'm pretty easy. As long as everybody's doing their job and doing it correctly, then cool, everybody's getting along. If there's a problem that we have, we'll address it. If it doesn't get addressed, then we got to have another discussion about it. And then if we got to have another discussion, then it's going to be a bad one. But we don't have to get to that point very often.
Right.
My guys, they like what we do. I kind of give them a lot of freedom to take care of operations. And if there's something that's not going the right way, then like I said, we got to figure it out. But I don't know. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I'm pretty flexible. I'm a family guy too. I got a wife. I got 2 kids. They're older now. They're 18 and 21. But a lot of my staff has kids, and I know how that works. Your kid's sick, somebody's got to stay home with the kid, or kid's got a soccer game on Saturday morning. You want to be there? I get it. All right, cool, go for it. Or your dog's sick. I had that last night, but I understand life comes up, and life's important too, and I understand people got to take care of life and their family. That's rule number 1. You got to take care of your home life. But we can't make a habit out of it either. We got work to do still.
True.
We got to take care of things. But
But
I'm flexible.
I think the message you deliver, and to your point earlier, David, too, was your experience coming up the way that you did at the age that you came up, and the way that you advanced through the company, staying with the company for 30 years. Now it's your company, right? I think a lot of that lends itself to your communication style, your leadership style, which is the culture. You are the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And for all intents and purposes, I think people understand that, but I don't think they understand that in real time, and how that retains people or pushes people away. And you've done a much better job than the average of retaining people.
Yeah, and I've thought too that I could probably have a more profitable business if I was more
Sure.
of a ball buster and got up everybody's tail about things.
Micromanager, the whole 9 yards.
Got my nose in everything and saw what they were doing, and but that's not me. That's not how I am.
But you also said it. I mean, you talk to them how you wanted to be talked to. I mean, that tough conversation that you have to be the GM, and then that even tougher conversation that you had to buy the stores. That's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't leave you. That's John Konersmann. Which brings me to my next question. You were promoted through. You were offered the store when the previous owner's health went, sadly. You were the guy on the floor who earned it. Now, 22 years later, are you looking around your team for the next John Konersmann, somebody who you could hand this to someday?
Not yet. I don't know. I'm still pretty young. I'm 47. I can't retire yet.
You're a pup.
I know, right? It'd be nice to retire, but I don't know.
I think the beautiful thing about that question is, and again, we talk about legacy. We've talked about all of it. You have such an amazing story that you're sharing with us today about the legacy. Even drew some emotion out of how that all transpired. And there will come a time, whether it's through expansion, there will come a time, even when you're looking for an exit or a handoff or the next generation to come in, whether you're out of the picture altogether or not is neither here nor there. But when we talk about this, and we talk about culture, and we talk about people, the greatest thing that we can do, especially with how you handle and how you lead your stores, is to grow those people. You can't move up until you find your replacement is a theme, and I'm sure it is in your stores. That's a theme I always operated under too, and made sure I made clear to my mid-level managers and everybody in between, in our ladder that we climb in automotive. Is that something that, when you talk to your employees, is there a career path that you discuss with them and provide them a clear outlook on? Not necessarily to ownership and the original question, but just how they get in that position to better themselves.
And I kind of tell a lot of the guys, when I'm interviewing people, here's my story. I started as the lowest level at a dealership, and here I am now. It doesn't work out like that for everybody, but there's certainly chance to improve here and better yourself within the company and grow. But you get out of the job what you put into it, you know. If you're a hustler and you're a hard worker and you're the kind of guy like I was when I was a kid, that I was there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning building CDs because I knew it had to get done the next day.
Right.
Okay, if I saw a kid doing that was really dedicated and knew that this had to get done and was hustling and wasn't on their phone all the time and they're working hard, yeah, that's a guy I want to keep. That's a guy that's management material. And I've had a lot of those people, and some of them are managers with me now, a bunch of them actually. Ryan, my GM at the North Store, he's been with me for 2000, I think we met. He's still here. He's my GM there.
That's awesome.
Tim's my GM at the Chesterfield store. Tim just started working with me this year, but I've known him for 20 years. He was in the Harley industry for a long time. Great dude.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just another person I've known for a long time, and we get along great and love having him here. But yeah, with a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, I'm telling them that, yeah, you know, with this job, with any job, you know, the more that you put in the job, the more that management can see that you're a hard worker, you're a hustler, that's how you get to move up. You know, if you come in and you're screwing around, you're hiding all the time, you're not doing your work, you're, you know, lazy about it, you're half-assing it, you're saying, that's not my job, I'm not doing that.
Right.
That's not a leader. That's not someone that's going to get promoted, you know. But there's a lot of good people that I've come across too. One kid in particular, Greg Venverlo, he started with us as an intern out of State Tech, long time ago, and he interned with us and he came back as technician. Really hard-working kid. Like, I never saw him not running around. He was just always just bouncing off the walls, and he was a good technician. Really sharp kid for as young as he was. He ended up getting on with Kawasaki. He's the regional Kawasaki service director now. He's
Wow.
moved up. Awesome. Happy for that kid. He's great. And he still lives in St. Louis. We see him all the time. But, you know, he's a kid that, you know, he moved up to a certain point. He was a technician, and he got an opportunity to take it to the next step, which wasn't with me, but still happy for the guy.
It's still your legacy.
Yeah, I know. I love the kid. He's great.
Yeah,
he's not
I
a
love
kid
that.
anymore. He's probably 30-something now. But, yeah, he's doing great.
You've got one of the greatest stories, and one of the greatest gifts you can provide any one of your employees is that story. And I think that's amazing.
Which one, Greg?
No, your story,
Oh,
period.
All right.
Yeah. But that is part of your legacy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 20 years ago, the business was about selling machines. Today, it's about selling machines to people who could buy them essentially online. What does the modern power sports salesperson actually need to be good at to be able to capture your market share?
You got to wear a lot of hats, and that's one thing that is very different about what we do. You know, with power sports, like, we sell so many different vehicles and so many different brands. You've got to know a lot about a lot of different vehicles. You know, when I came into this business, I was watercraft. That's all that I knew. I had never ridden a motorcycle. I'd never
Right.
ridden an ATV. Side by sides weren't even a thing. I knew watercraft. That was it, and I had to learn the rest of it, and I did. You know, but a lot of people that come in, they've rode motorcycles. All right, cool. Never sat in a side-by-side. Okay, well, we got to teach them that and, you know, pick up the terminology. And the terminology that we use, too, is it's different than what Automotive uses, I found. You know, like auto parts guys, what they call a part on a car or a truck is different than what we would call that part on a side-by-side.
Right.
Slightly, you know, what we call a drive shaft or a half shaft or a prop shaft, they call it something else, you know. Just have different names for things. And understanding what that is in our terminology, in our language, you just have to pick up from being around it for so long, you know, and knowing the vehicles, too, and all the different names of all the different brands of vehicles that we have. You know, there's a lot. Like, you know, if a guy comes up to the parts counter and says he's got a GSX-R, okay, if you've been around power sports for a while, you know that's a Suzuki motorcycle. If he says it's a GSX, you know that's a 96 Sea-Doo. Two very different machines just from that
Right.
one letter, but if you haven't been in this industry, you wouldn't know that.
Not everybody calls it a Gixxer.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And some people, like, if they've only come from a side-by-side background, they have no idea what a Gixxer is.
Right.
Or they have no idea what a Sea-Doo GSX is. So you got to know a lot of different things about different vehicles, and technicians are the same way, too. You know, it's kind of unique. Like, if you were at a Ford dealership, you know, you're working on your Fords and the different platforms of engines that they have, and their way of doing things, I'm sure, is different than Chevy's or Dodge or Toyota or Honda or anything. But, you know, at my stores, we carry, you know, 5 or 6 different lines of vehicles, and we work on all of them. So there's a very good possibility that you could be going from working on a Sea-Doo watercraft to a Polaris side-by-side to a Kawasaki motorcycle to a Suzuki ATV all in the same day, and they're completely different vehicles with completely different diagnostic systems and parts and microfiche and everything. So, you know, from the front of the house to the back, everybody's got to know a lot about the different brands that we sell and the different products and what makes one different from the other and the features and benefits of all of them. Like there's a lot that you got to know, and really a lot of it just comes from being an enthusiast.
Right.
And typically, I try and hire people that are enthusiasts. You know, they ride something. You know, we've had automotive guys that come in, and we still have some of them. You know, it's a little different. You got to teach them the terminology, and you know, it takes them a minute to pick up on that. There's a lot of different little quirks of different vehicles that you would only know just from being around it. But you know, the enthusiast typically, you know, if a guy's into bikes, that's a strong point. If someone comes in that has a bike-related question, then they'll know how to answer that. And if they're into it, they'll do some research and they'll start learning about the rest of it too. You know, kind of like I did when I came into it. You know, we didn't have the internet then, but I just started reading more and more and more about motorcycles and ATVs and side-by-sides. And just from being in a shop when I was young, I saw, okay, this is how a four-cycle engine works. When I went to tech school, we only had two-stroke watercraft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were all carbureted two-strokes back in the 90s, and then fuel injection started coming out, and then four-cycle started coming out, and I had never even seen an ATV or motorcycle engine or a transmission, so I just from being in a shop and asking questions and learning, oh, okay, that's cool, that's how that works. Awesome.
And
So-
do you get help from the manufacturers? Because, like you said, you got guys that got to know 4 different models or makes, I should say, plus completely different styles.
There's a lot of sales training that the manufacturers are putting out now, and it's all web-based. You know, the sales guys can jump on and, you know, bounce through a couple little videos and learn about the new products. For the technicians, there's more training. There's, I think all the manufacturers offer some in-person training, which is a little difficult. I'm sure Automotive does too, but, you know, for Powersports, like for Can-Am technical training, they got to go to Wisconsin for it.
Right.
And there's not anywhere else you can go. Like, that's where you got to go. And, you know, Honda's got one school somewhere. Polaris has got one in Minnesota. So sending a technician for a week up to Minnesota or Wisconsin or whatever, that's kind of a pain. But
especially when you're going to do it. You're going to do it in February.
Right.
You want to go to
the
Iron Range of Minnesota during February?
Yeah.
I would recommend against it unless you really like hockey.
But that's when you got to do it because that's when we're slowest. And
yeah.
Okay, well, that would make the most sense to send them for training during the slower months anyway. But they do also have some web-based technical courses that you can take. They're not as in-depth as the in-person stuff, but it's a requirement for a lot of the manufacturers now that we have to have at least a certain level of technician on staff, so we have somebody that knows what they're doing with these vehicles. You know, how to use the diagnostic software and how to link up with the vehicle and how to read the fault codes, and
which is only going to evolve more and more as time goes on. Well, you've talked me out of buying anything fun like that online for sure. That's way too much information to know. Now we're going to compare and contrast, because we just did compared and contrast 2 businesses there, the car business and obviously what we're talking about here with Powersports. But most of our audience, they do run car and truck dealerships. When you look at the 2 businesses side by side, car retail and Powersports resale, what's the biggest structural difference between the 2, in your opinion?
Well, the facilities seem to be a lot bigger for automotive stores, you know. They've been around for a long time, I think, too. You know, you look at a lot of the, in the St. Louis area, you know, a lot of the big automotive networks have been around for a long, long, long time.
Right.
And it's, you know, generational. A lot of names that have been around since I was a kid. They're still around now. Powersports a little different. You know, I'm kind of one of the older guys now that's been around this long, and I'm still doing it. A lot of dealers I've seen have come and gone or sold out or retired or closed up or got absorbed by something else in the last 30 years I've been doing this. So there's a lot of, you know, changes with Powersport dealerships. But, you know, now it seems like there's a lot of, you know, dealers similar to what I'm doing. You know, there's multi-location stores that are having a lot of lines, you know, spread out in different regions and stuff. You know, kind of covering a lot of that, and there's a lot of fewer of the little single line, smaller stores that are out there. There's still some good dealers that are doing really good businesses at it, but you know, it seems like there's fewer and fewer of those. But comparing to automotive, seems like a lot of the things of the practices that we're seeing from the manufacturers too in Powersports is we're a few years behind what Automotive's doing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things I've seen, like Polaris in particular, doing. It seems like it's stuff that automotive dealers started doing a few years ago, like requirements they need from their dealerships and
Yeah.
showroom enhancements and a bunch of hoops you got to jump through to be compliant. And
You're very political in saying hoops. I would call it something far different than that. But with that being said, we've seen a trend too where car dealers seem to be wanting to layer their systems, processes, and habits in acquisition of Powersports franchises. What advice would you give them, and what contrast would you give them before they jump into Powersports?
it is different.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same as what automotive is, at least from what I can tell. I've never sold a car in my life. But, you know, I would say that the biggest benefit you could have if you were looking to buy a powersport dealership and you've never done it before is you got to have someone that does know what they're doing, that has been doing it for a number of years, that speaks this language, that has been doing it for a number of years, that knows how to work the ordering processes and all the back-end rewards that come with the manufacturers and all the nuances of working with these different OEMs. If you go into it blindly, you've never done it before, it's going to be difficult. You know, this is all I've ever done, so it's kind of comes natural to me. But I've never sold a car in my life. I'm sure if I just got into selling cars, I would have to learn a whole lot on the fly, and I would probably struggle with it. So I'm sure it works the other way too. You know, you'd have to have someone that has been doing this for a while if you're going to get into it.
In your role with being the president of Powersports Dealers Association, do you get those phone calls from dealers? Do they call you and ask you?
Not too often. About 10 or 12 years ago, a guy did reach out to me that he sold his business. He was an older gentleman. He was probably in his 60s or something, and he sold a business for a few $1 million that he had, a successful business, and he wanted to get into Powersports. And he was looking at one outside of my territory entirely.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't affect me at all. I said, yeah, you're probably better off just taking your money and doing something fun, you know, because it's going to be a headache for you, because he'd never worked a day in this industry. He didn't know anything about it. I said, buddy, I wouldn't hire you to sell parts at my store because you've never done this.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're getting into. But if you insist on doing it, find someone that has and let him run the store, because you don't know what you're getting into, and you're just going to struggle with it a lot because, you know, you don't speak the language.
You know, one major variation that anybody can see when they're driving down the road and see a powersports store versus automotive store is there's very few standalone powersports stores by one manufacturer. Why do you think that all powersports stores have multi-lines, besides mainly Honda, usually some of those that you see as a standalone, like their Powerhouse, which is a requirement, you know, to be a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think that most powersports dealers carry multi-line versus focusing on one brand per se for your team?
Well, for me, it was always to be able to offer everything to every customer. You know, if I just had Can-Am and a customer walks in and wants to see, well, what else is out there, well, I only show them what I have.
Yeah.
If I have 4 other lines, well, it can be a little bit overwhelming, and we see that a lot when people walk in, like, wow, you've got 6 lines of vehicles here. What's the best one? Well, we got to walk around, show them the features and benefits, find out what they're going to use it for, and, you know, find them the right vehicle. But if you only have one to show, then you're limited on what you can offer, and they might go somewhere else to get it. So, you know, I think a lot of dealers probably look at it the same way I do. Like, if there's an open point that you can pick up another line that's successful, that is selling vehicles, then why wouldn't you want to have that under your roof to sell those vehicles too? You know, it gives you another offering, lets you sell more of those vehicles to somebody. If you were not a Can-Am dealer, but you could have Can-Am, and there's people buying Can-Am in your primary market area, why wouldn't you want to have Can-Am and sell those people and service those customers and make your dealership more
Why
profitable?
do you think the manufacturer's so tolerant of it? Because you're not going to have a Ford store and a Chevy store in the same building. Those two aren't going to say, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, some are legacy. There's very, very few of those left in the nation. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's definitely not common anywhere in the United States to have have that in the automotive world.
It's hen's teeth for sure. It's as rare as hen's teeth in automotive for sure.
Yeah. Power sports has always been like that. There's some benefits to being a powerhouse dealer for Honda. They give you a couple extra carrots, but I think it would be tough to be a standalone Honda dealer. There's parts of segments that Honda doesn't do great in that other brands do. So if you only have Honda, you're missing out on what else you could be selling from those other OEMs if that's all you have. And the benefit you get from being a powerhouse Honda dealer, really, I don't think is going to outweigh the benefit of having a couple of other lines there to offset that. So I think for most dealers, the way I've always seen it, the more you can have, the better. Then no one has to shop you if you've got everything. But also with that, depending on your facility and how big it is,
Right.
If you're only selling one line, you're not going to be as profitable enough to be able to afford the type of backbone and infrastructure that you're going to need to operate a sizable dealership. You're going to need a certain number of employees and staff to operate at a high level, and with just one brand, you're probably not going to have a whole lot. You'll be able to have a bigger facility and more people if you have more lines to offer, so you can sell more parts, more accessories, more service, and more vehicles.
Powersports customers are buying a want, not a need. Nobody needs a jet ski. Nobody needs a UTV. How does that reshape the entire selling process compared to selling somebody a Honda Pilot or, obviously, conversely, a Honda, a Pioneer for their family? How does that vary?
Yeah, it is different. The stuff we're selling is not a need. It's a luxury. It's a toy.
Right.
And financing plays into that too. I know with the automotive world, they can get a lot deeper credit than we can. But, some of these things that we sell, they are tools. They are necessities, specifically with the ATVs and UTVs. People use these things as a tool on their property for, property maintenance or hunting or, managing their acreage, whatever. They got to use these things to get around and check their fences, chase the cattle, haul landscaping materials, whatever it is. They use these things a lot. But motorcycles, watercraft, yes, those are toys, 100%. And when the people walk in our door, they're wanting these vehicles already. They know it's a toy. They know
Right.
what they're looking at. If there's a good enough incentive for them to buy now, then cool. That's what we do. That's our job. That we're here to make dreams happen.
I love that. There's a lot of pressure on F&I compliance in automotive, and that's the genesis of this question as we contrast these two industries, right? The FTC CARS rule, CFPB scrutiny, state VSC rules, all that squeezing the car F&I in 2026. We're dealing with it currently. There were 2,000 rooftops that got those letters from the FTC. Is Powersports getting that same regulatory pressure, or is it flying under the radar currently?
I'm watching it close, and right now, as far as I know, Powersports are not part of it yet.
Correct.
But it's probably coming. That's what I'm being told, and I communicate with Doug at MADA fairly regularly, and this is one of the things we talk about. Are we hearing anything about powersport dealers yet? And for that matter, the RV Dealer Association's merged with the auto dealers now too in Missouri, so they're in with us. Marine is not, but they're kind of on the similar thing too. Where it's a luxury thing, are they going to have to start following these new guidelines as well? Right now we're not, but that's going to change how powersport dealers are advertising if we are going that route. Much like it is with the automotive industry. It's and I haven't seen how it's affecting the dealerships and in automotive and how they're if it's affecting their sales negatively or if it's benefiting them. But every dealer now is advertising a price, and the manufacturer's doing it too. And MSRP is this, and then very small it shows plus freight destination. And it does kind of, it's a little bit misleading for the consumer because they see that big number and they come in, that's what they want to pay for it. But, the freight charge that we get charged is a legitimate thing. That's not just some made-up number that we come up with. It's an actual charge, and it's not a variable that we can negotiate. It's built into our invoice price. We can't pick it up ourselves. We can't hire a different trucking company. The manufacturer charges us the cost plus the freight that they charge. That's the only way to get it. And sometimes our invoice price with the freight is higher than MSRP. I don't know if automotive is like that, but
No,
So-
it's destination charges factored into the MSRP.
Yeah. So why do you think in power sports the manufacturers don't or haven't factored that in? Because in automotive, your sticker shows that your destination charge is $13.95. That is then calculated at the bottom of your MSRP.
it's a competitive market. And if they've built that in, then it's going to make their vehicle, add a cost to it that the other brand didn't. So, they're all trying to keep up with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And until they have to, they're not going to advertise it that way. And they're going to cut into the dealer margin as much as they can to kind of get that MSRP down, lower. And then, just let the dealer add the freight.
And assembly.
Yeah, and we do have to assemble these things too. Like we said earlier, they don't just come to us ready to go. There is a procedure we got to go to put these things together. We got to pay somebody to do it. This is an actual cost. It's not just made up. I got a whole team of guys that they got to unload the crate off the truck. They got to unwrap it, uncrate it, lift it up, put the wheels, put the shocks on, put the handlebars on. And some of these things take a few hours. It's a legitimate cost. But the FTC thing is going to be interesting to see where it lands with Powersports and how soon we get to that point and what it's going to do for dealers. And across the board, everywhere you look, dealers are charging some kind of freight and assembly charge somewhere. It's oftentimes not disclosed until you get to the dealership, but pretty soon, if this goes through, it's going to have to be disclosed on every advertisement you have, obviously, and that's going to affect how dealers market their product.
Absolutely.
Do you think it'll help or hinder?
That was going to be my question.
Good and bad. I mean, some dealers, that's their whole thing. They advertise low and they add fees to it to, get people from outside their market to come in. Some do it more than others, but it's certainly going to level the playing field. And I think we'll get fewer people traveling from further distances to come get a perceived deal. They'll probably stay closer to home because they can just see, well, here's the advertised price everywhere. There's no games anymore. This is the clear and transparent pricing of the vehicle, and okay, it is what it is. Then I'll just get it wherever I can get it from.
Now, do you guys see or can you receive a report from your manufacturers of like a pump in, pump out report from your PMAs?
Yeah, most of them. We see that from just about every OEM. We can see whose territories we're selling into, who's selling into ours. And we can tell kind of what's going on with a lot of them, the guys that are advertising really low. They might have some better sales in certain areas. Some we're pretty strong with in our own territories that we're doing well with. We're carrying the load. But that's useful data. I'm sure the automotive has that too. Mm-hmm. You can see There's so much data from warranty registrations. You can see what sold where and who bought what and what segment's doing well and how they paid for it. And
I think to pull back the curtain on a lot of that, and again, taking your insight as far as Powersports maybe being a couple years or a few years behind automotive, there's no secret that when, let's use Toyota for example, when Toyota sets up their Kansas City region and they've got totals for each one of their dealerships, they don't necessarily want to see the 30th ranked dealer out of 75 move up into the top 5. That's not their goal. Mm-hmm. They want them to do basically their numbers every single month that they forecast. And I think a lot of what the FTC is doing and a lot of what they're trying to do with equalizing the playing field, leveling the playing field for consumers, is an actual attempt at satisfying the dealer's desire to not have this outlier that can price things so low that they can start climbing that ladder and becoming a top producing fill-in-the-blank manufacturer. Mm-hmm. I think I think it's a little bit more diabolical than simple federal oversight. In a weird way, I'm speaking way on the macro, and I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people. And if we have any manufacturers watching this podcast, that's not something that they're going to want to talk about for sure. But it's an absolute maxim. It's true. They don't want you to climb. And I think that's probably something that will happen, unfortunately, downstream, that Powersports RV and maybe Marine will subject themselves to that kind of scrutiny as well in the future.
Very likely. We'll see, what happens and how that's going to affect things.
I mean, it's all under the guise, too, of transparency. Transparency is good. But that's how politicians sell us things. And that's what this is. Make no mistake. Talk to me about family for a second. You spent 30 years inside these buildings, burning it at both ends, blood, sweat, and tears. We've talked about that. Who at home has carried that cost and carried the cost of that with you?
My wife more than anything. Yeah, I'm usually, I'm working late again, trying to get paperwork done, get caught up on emails. I'm so far behind on things. And I go home and I work more, and I'm not always available to do the home tasks that I should be. And I think that's probably pretty common with a lot of automotive guys too, and I know automotive has later hours than we do oftentimes, usually 3 days a week. They're open till like 8 or 9 o'clock or something. Yeah, like we don't do that, but still there's a lot of times when we got to stay late. We got customers there that are papering out, and we got to stay there and make sure that we're getting the deal done and getting them taken care of. And my wife gets it. She understands it. She's been with me long enough. She knows, okay, yeah, we got to take care of people. Still frustrating sometimes when we got stuff going on.
For sure.
But that's part of it. And car guys, you get it. You know how it goes. But, when you've been around it for a long time, it's, I guess she's used to it now.
Used to it and supports it and is your bedrock for all of that, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Unless it affects date night. That's always the one.
Well, yeah, then we got to, figure something else out. Somebody else is going to have to close up then. But, usually from what I'm doing now, like I don't sell as much anymore. I'm a terrible salesman because I'm doing owner stuff and I forget about, forgot to order somebody's part or forgot to get their vehicle ready or something because I got owner duties going on. But, usually I have staff that if we got to stay late, they're usually the ones that are staying late. But I'm usually doing owner stuff and catching up on payroll or bills or accounting or something that I got to do. And I got to sit at my office and get it done, or I got to go home and do it when I get home. And I do put in a lot of hours, but, she's used to it. She knows what I do.
It's fabulous. Pay her roses right there.
Definitely.
When you're 85 years old and you're telling your grandkids what you did with your life, is it going to be the buildings, the brands, or the people, or something else entirely?
Well, probably not the buildings. I mean, I lease 2 of the buildings. I own 1, but I don't know. Just, I guess if there's anything about it, it's more that, my story, where I came from,
yep.
How I really started at the very bottom and grew it up to something big, and here we are now. It worked out for me, but it took a lot of hard work to get here, a lot of effort, and like I was saying earlier, same as what I tell all the staff, the people when I'm interviewing them, you get out of the job what you put into it, and that goes with any job you have, anywhere you're working the rest of your life. The more you put in it, the more you're going to get out of it. Might not work out like it did for me, where you become the owner and it gets bigger than there. But if you're a landscaper and you're dedicated and you're good at it and you put hard work into it and you do good work, it'll show. If you're a trash truck driver and you're dedicated to picking up trash, cool, they're going to notice it. You might be head trash truck driver someday. But I think with any job that you're going to have, like, the employers will see that. Your bosses are going to see that. If you're a hard worker, you're a valuable asset to the team. They want to have you on their team. Then the rewards will follow if they want to keep you. If it goes the other way and you don't want to work and you show up late and when you are there, you're on your phone or you're lazy, then it goes the other way. The rewards will not follow.
You have an amazing story to share, which is what we're doing today. In automotive, there is a huge threat from M&A. There's a huge threat from consolidation in our industry, in the automotive retail side of things. In big Powersports, retail roll-ups are starting to move a little bit. Rumble On, Freedom Powersports, private equity. I'm going to assume that you've received calls from one of those, if not all of those ones, reaching out to you potentially.
Strangely enough, no.
Okay.
I'm jealous.
How do you think about and how do you frame wanting to stay independent from all that?
I'm pretty easygoing, like I said. No one has reached out to me, and I have not had to turn anyone down. I've not taken any calls, but I haven't had to.
But if they called, you would?
I'd be foolish to not entertain it,
You'd always listen, yes.
I'm 47. I'm going to be working for a while. I can't retire yet, but, if something made sense and, if someone came in with a dump truck full of money, wanted to buy me out, I'd be foolish to not listen, but I have to find something else to do because I still got to work. I'm too young to just stop working.
We talked about that.
Maybe I could come do a podcast with you every day.
You could host a podcast at that point. I don't think, and again, we've joked about this in the past. We joked about this in training. We've joked about this on podcasts. I'm going to be the turtle doing dealer trades. There's no way I'm going to get out of automotive, retail to some extent. This fills my cup, and I get to get that high on a daily basis in doing what I do currently, and I'm sure David does too. Now we're going to move into the close and some rapid fire questions, if you don't mind. What was the first watercraft that you purchased?
Well, my parents purchased it, but it was a
Sure,
93
that's okay.
Yamaha Pro VXR. 701cc, 63 horsepower.
You don't know very much about it then, do you?
When I was a kid, like I was 14 years old and got that. That was my thing. I can spot a watercraft from across the lake, and I know exactly what it is and what motor's in it. And before we had internet, I had magazines. I read watercraft magazines cover to cover. Like I was so excited when they came in the mail. Like, oh, cool. And I read about everything that was coming out, and that's what I did at Lake of the Ozarks. I just learned about watercraft. That was my thing. I can
Different
tell you everything.
sounds.
I can tell what they were just by, there's what it is. I know how fast it'll do, what motor it had. That was my thing. That's how I got started. And I got into racing, and that was my thing. I loved it.
When you transitioned from service to sales in that brief moment when you tore your shoulder up and suffered that injury, what was the first unit you sold?
Ooh, gosh, it was probably a Sea-Doo, because it was in the summertime. So I don't remember what the first unit I sold was, but we were moving a lot of Sea-Doos in that era, so it was probably a watercraft.
Gotcha. What is your favorite toy that you've ever owned?
Sea-Doo 98 SPX, which is my race boat that doesn't run anymore, but it's a fun watercraft. They made this same hull and motor combination for 4 years, the 96 XPs and 97 89 SPXs. Back when I was racing, that was what everybody was racing. Super lightweight hull. You modify the motor a little bit. They got tons of power. For jumping waves, they're great. Handles like nothing else out there. They're awesome.
Is that what you got injured on?
No, it was actually a stand-up,
Okay.
which I got into riding those too. And I still have a stand-up, but a stand-up jet ski is the one you stand on.
They're kind of making a comeback, aren't they? Are they
Sort of, they're not for everybody. They're hard to ride, but I learned when I was a kid. My dad got me one of those when I was like 15, and I fell in love with that too, and just started riding stand-ups. Like, this is cool. Not everybody can ride it. They're hard to ride, and you can ride those things for years and years and years, and you're still not that great at it. But,
Right.
You can be 85 years old and barely can walk, but you can jump on any one of these brand new 300-horse Sea-Doos and jump on it, and you can do 70 miles an hour. But it takes some skill to drive a stand-up.
It does. We had those even in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and they were tough. Best book you've read lately?
You got me on that one. I don't read a whole lot.
Best podcast you've listened to lately? And you can say the Car Bar.
I've been listening to the Car Bar a lot before coming in for this. So, yeah, that one's the number one.
I will take that. One boss you'd work for again tomorrow. No questions asked.
Barry.
Yeah.
Which really, he was the last boss that I had. Before him, there wasn't too many. Joel Bianco. I haven't talked to him at all. His brother worked for me for a while. But, yeah, other than that, Barry was a good dude, though. Miss him. But, yeah.
I love that. Favorite movie?
Movie. Gosh, there's a lot of them. I don't know. There's a lot of good TV shows.
Name one. Let's go there.
Well, okay, so Sons of Anarchy was pretty good. I'm not
Hell
into the whole Harley
yes.
thing, but that was a good show.
Yeah.
It kind of jumped the shark a little bit towards the end. Vikings was probably the best show I've ever seen. That one I love.
You're talking to a Scandinavian kid with a full sleeve of pagan-themed
Awesome.
tattoos, so
That show
you
was
got
killer.
me there. I love that
The
show.
Boys was really good.
Yeah.
I love that one too.
Love it. One deal, one transaction you still think about?
Gosh, I don't know. No. There's been a lot. Like a sales deal?
Yeah.
I can't think of any of them that really stood out. I've sold so many vehicles in the course of 30 years. met a lot of people, met a lot of friends, people I still talk to. I've sold a lot of people, a lot of units. Nothing's really standing out, though, that was, special or different or anything.
It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, flip side of that, what is one customer's name you'll never forget? And it's usually not your favorite customer. Could be.
I can't think of any that would be on my list that are really bad ones. I got a lot of good customers that still come back and still buy stuff from me that I've known for a long, long time. That there's some that have my cell phone number, not a lot, but they'll text me and call me up and say, "Hey, how's this thing? You got any of these? Cool, yeah, come down. We'll check them out." Like, I'll give you an example. So, the guy that gave me the job at Lake of the Ozarks, his name's Mike Campbell. He had a remote watercraft repair service called Dr. Wave. He messaged me. He didn't know it was me, but he messaged us on a CF Moto side by side last fall, and I saw his name on Marketplace. And I said, "Hey, Doc Campbell." I messaged him back, "Is this Dr. Wave?" "Yeah, who's this?" And I messaged him back who I was. I haven't talked to him since 1995 or 6, and like, "Hey, I'm the kid that you hired in 95, and now I'm own 3 dealerships in St. Louis. And get the fuck out." So he came up and bought one from me, and he's a good dude. He's the one that gave me my start.
That's awesome.
If he hadn't tapped on me to be that kid to work the counter at that little store, then I might be a doctor or something now.
Well, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's wild how the world works in that, too. How they always come back.
I didn't know if he was dead or what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't talked to him in forever, and I saw that name. This got to be him. And made the connection. That's the guy that gave me my start.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Best restaurant in St. Louis.
The one that I really liked is closed now. It was Harvest, but they're not around anymore. Citizen Kane Steakhouse is really good.
Nice.
That's probably my favorite.
Coffee or something else in the morning?
Not coffee. Never been a coffee drinker.
Caffeine drink of any sort?
No.
Not really?
No, sometimes I'll drink a soda or mostly tea.
Gotcha. What's the part of ownership, GM and above, part of that job that nobody warned you about? And knowing your story, you didn't get a whole lot of warnings, period.
No. I kind of knew what it was going into it. Gosh, I don't really know that I've had any surprises that I didn't know about.
What a balance sheet is.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, the accounting side of it, I had to learn that kind of on the fly, and my accountant helped a lot with that. But, understanding, we use QuickBooks, understanding that and how that functions. And like you said, what is a balance sheet? What is a P&L? And dealing with the manufacturers and the OEMs and the floor plan providers, like, what is all this stuff they're asking for? A 25-year-old kid's never done this before. I didn't know what this was. So that was a shock, and a lot of times your GMs aren't going to have to mess with that either. That's kind of owner-level stuff, and I had to learn what all that stuff was. And this was before we even had Google. We didn't have ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I kind of had to...
Just trial by fire.
Yeah.
As organic as it gets.
Taxes was another thing. Like, huh?
Oh, yeah.
I what? No, that ain't right.
That can't be right. Closing out our conversation today. For the dealer principals and general managers listening, it's car side, power sports side, RV side, doesn't matter. What's the one thing that you've learned in your 22 years as an owner that you wish somebody had told you at 26?
We're going to have to edit this out because I'm sitting here thinking.
There, no reason to edit. That's the whole part of it.
I can't really think of anything. Like I said, I've been doing this from kind of the same job for such a long time. Like when I started GM in the dealership back in like 01, like I kind of had a grasp on what I was doing then. And I knew it was going to be long hours. I knew it was going to be a lot of hard work. I knew I was going to be doing it all. I guess probably a couple things. Number one, take care of your family as much as you can. I was still there for my kids for a lot of stuff. My wife made it very important to me. Like, hey, we need to be here for this. Your your kid's in a school play or something, or he's got a basketball game or football game or something, like, okay, make sure you're leaving so that you're here for this, Make sure you take care of your kids and your partner, your wife, your husband, whoever it is, you got to take care of your home life, make sure that's still an important part of it. It can't all be work, and sometimes I'm guilty of that too. I got work I got to do, but take care of your family. You got to take care of your people too. And I think I've done a good job of that. Most of my staff likes me, I think. But you can't do it all by yourself. You got to have people that care about your business too, and you got to care about them. So you got to surround yourself with good people that are smarter than you are, that can do the things when you can't be there, and take care of your operations. So, as people,
that's a brilliant
really
answer.
Thing.
That's exactly where I wanted you to go with it.
On both hats, your home life, you got to go home and take off your work hat and be a dad, be a husband, and then next day you got to go back to work, put your work hat back on, and do your work and take care of your people there.
That's brilliant, John.
There's one thing you would change in the power sports industry, good or bad. What would it be?
Oh boy! Well, now we're going to be here for a minute. Well, there's a lot of things, a lot of the OEMs that I don't like how they do some certain things. There's different things that we could do that would help the dealer network be stronger, and kind of one of the things we're talking about, like dealers discounting and moving up the ladder and taking sales from outside of their market, and if a dealer is incentivized to sell something for nothing and they're taking customers from other primary markets to theirs, well, that manufacturer's still selling that same vehicle. It's just coming from another dealer, just not coming from the dealer that's going to be there to support that consumer.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sure Automotive has MAP policies, minimum advertised pricing. Powersports do too, and some have teeth, some don't. Some there's stricter restrictions on what they can advertise and how you can advertise it. And I think if that were stronger, that would kind of help the dealer networks to retain some of their own PMA more, as opposed to losing it from some guy from far out of state because he's overloaded with inventory and he's selling it on cheap. Otherwise, if he couldn't advertise for that, then we'd all be kind of at the same price, But that might come anyway with the FTC thing, but then there's still going to be dealers that are going to advertise it lower than anybody else, where they're not making any money. They're just kind of trying to flush inventory out, and then more is just going to show up. It's kind of a hamster wheel that you keep going back on. You sell your inventory cheap to get rid of it because you got too much of it, and then more of it's on the truck on the way there as soon as you sell it, and then you got more inventory again, but then your numbers look up because you just sold more units, so then they're going to say, you got to order more, you got to order more.
Yep.
You sold more units. Well, then we're not getting anywhere, though. We're still not being profitable. We're just selling more units.
Now it sounds like Automotive, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the similarities we're talking about.
Those similarity chapter that we went through was screaming right now. That's for sure.
So, stuff like that. Everybody wants to make more money, and I think if the manufacturers were able to, make it a little more of a level, how prices are advertised, that would probably help the dealers retain their local markets better, as opposed to losing them to out of state. And vice versa. If I've got too much of one thing that I'm selling on the cheap side, I get people from all across the Midwest coming to pick it up too, and they're not going to bring it back to me for service. They're going to service at their local guy.
Yep.
So,
I have one more question for me. What, as the president of Missouri Powersports Dealer Association, what would you tell any powersports owner, GM, sales manager, whoever, the reason why they need to be involved with the MPSDA?
That's a great point. I got involved shortly after I became an owner. The president of the association then, Bob Jones from J&W Cycles, he sold out his dealership a number of years ago. Very good friend of mine. Started his dealership in the 70s, like a lot of the guys in the St. Louis market did. Dave Munganast, Carl Donaldson, Bob Jones, Gary Serdike, names of dealerships. Been around for a long time. All those guys were motocross racers. They raced against each other, and then they opened up dealerships. Kind of cool story. They were all competitors racing, and then they're competitors in business. It's cool, though, Back in the day, there was only a couple bike shops in town. Bob Jones was a good dude, good friend of mine. Right after I became an owner, he got me involved in the dealer association. I didn't even know there was one, but he was the president of it then, and I started coming to all the meetings and learning about what this is and what it means to our dealerships. And how important it is that if someone's not watching for these things, there could be legislative things that come out that may be innocent, that nobody even knew or thought about, that would affect us very adversely. So somebody's got to be there to watch for things that are coming up, you know. And I merged this with the Auto Dealer Association a number of years ago. It's been a great relationship since then. But fortunately for Powersports, we haven't had any crises that we've had to deal with in a very long time. A number of years ago, we had a couple of them. The dock fee thing that was in Missouri that hit a lot of automotive dealers and one Powersport dealer. We had to figure that out. And in that same year, we had the lead law came out, and you guys probably didn't even hear about. I forget the entity that the Consumer Product Safety Commission was banning any product made for children under 12 years old that contained any lead content. So the idea here is that if a kid's sucking on a toy truck that had lead paint in it, he's ingesting lead.
Right.
All right, great idea. But our vehicles, our youth ATVs and dirt bikes, are made for kids. There's certainly lead content in the engines and the batteries and the frame. Everything about this vehicle there's lead content in it. So for a long time, we couldn't sell youth vehicles because of that. And we were subject to fines if you did sell a youth vehicle for a period of time. It was at least a year, I think. So, you know, between that and the dock fee thing, those were the last couple of big issues I think that came up. You know, and having a dealer association that watches for things like that is incredibly beneficial. There's been a lot of other things that have come up over the years that we've been able to catch and kind of curve the language a little bit to where it isn't detrimental to what we do and doesn't affect us all in a negative way. And I'm fortunate that I've been a part of it for a long time, and I'm happy to keep doing it. But it is very beneficial. If there's dealers out there that aren't part of it, let me know. There's ways to get to be a part of it and learn about it if there's anything you want to know about it. Or if you're in a state that doesn't have a dealer association, it's a big benefit to have, so you've got a watchdog out there to keep an eye on things that could come down that could very, very, very much impact your business operations and how you do things without even knowing that it's there.
That's an amazing cap to an amazing conversation. John Konersmann, thank you so much for coming on the Car Bar, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate
Absolutely. David, thank you.
Thank you guys.
We'll see you next time, buddy.